I'm pretty sure that if anyone knows even a little bit about Hayabusa's combos and actually tries him for about 10 to 30 games, then they'll start doing just fine. Honestly, you don't need to master everything at once. If you can just understand one solid basic combo and learn how to properly mark the right hero, you'll already be able to perform decently in most matches. It's really that simple, like stack your marks, time your ultimate correctly, and boom, you're good to go. But the thing is, a lot of people still don't know how to use Hayabusa to his fullest potential. And when I say that, I'm not only talking about beginners, even players with really fast hands. Those who can pull off flashy combos quickly might think they've already mastered him. But no, that's not the case. Even if you're fast, you might still be missing a few important details that are secretly holding you back from truly unlocking Hayabusa's full power. Trust me on this. Once you actually learn how to use Hayabusa the right way, down to the smallest details, he becomes a completely different hero. At that point, he's not only deadly, but also extremely hard to counter. You won't be shut down easily, not even by annoying one-shot heroes like Saber or Eudora. Yes, they can catch you if you're careless, but if you play Hayabusa to his true potential, escaping or even turning the fight around becomes second nature. And here's something that should encourage a lot of players. What I'm going to teach you isn't just for fast-hand players. I know many people believe that Hayabusa is only for those with insane reflexes, but that's not true at all. Even players with slower hands can perform really well if they understand the mechanics and apply them correctly. This guide, or let's say this approach, is made for both fast-hand players who want to refine their execution and for slow-hand players who want to prove that they can shine just as much. Now I'm going to start, so listen carefully, because this part is really important for early game of Hayabusa. Hayabusa's true potential in the early game doesn't actually come from his ultimate. A lot of players make the mistake of thinking, oh, once I hit level 4, I can just ult and kill anyone instantly. But that's not how it works at all. In the early game, Hayabusa's strongest tools are his first skill, his shadows, and yes, even his basic attack. You might be surprised when I say this, but it's true. His basic attack, when used properly along with his passive, deals a good amount of damage in early trades, so don't ignore it just because you're focused on his skills. Here's the key. Your ultimate in the early stages should not be used as your main damage source. Instead, it's more of a finishing move. Think of it as a way to confirm a kill or to wipe out that last chunk of HP from your enemy after you've already done the heavy lifting with your first skill, shadows, and basics. That means before you press your ultimate, you should already aim to bring down at least half of the enemy's HP through your shadows and skill rotations. If you don't, and you just rush your ult too early, chances are high that you'll leave the enemy escaping with just a sliver of HP, sometimes literally 1 HP. And nothing feels worse than watching your target walk away like that. The reason behind this is simple. In the early game, Hayabusa's ultimate is actually very weak. It doesn't pack the same punch as it does in the mid to late game once you have more items. So if you rely only on your ult at level 4, you'll almost always be disappointed. That's why you need to set it up properly. So, remember this golden rule. Shadows, plus first skill, plus basic attacks first, ultimate second. This is the foundation of playing Hayabusa effectively in the early game. Once you understand this and start applying it, you'll see a massive difference in your performance and kill confirmations. For example, take a look right here. You'll notice that I didn't just rush in and use my ultimate right away. That's the mistake a lot of Hayabusa players make. Instead, I first focused on bringing Melissa's HP down before ulting. Another important thing I made sure of was to mark my stacks before ulting. This is crucial because Hayabusa's passive gives him extra burst when the marks are fully stacked, and without that, your damage output is way weaker. So never waste your ult without at least trying to set up a few stacks. I also made sure to position myself far away from the enemy minions, because Hayabusa's ultimate might distributes its slashes to enemy minions. But since I was aware of that, I pulled myself away from the minion wave before ulting. That way, every single slash from my ultimate hit Melissa directly, securing the kill cleanly. Now let's move on to the mid game. During this stage, your playstyle changes a little compared to the early game, By now you should already have some farm and a couple of core items, which means your damage is way higher. At this point, your combo usually revolves around a mix of normal attacks and your ultimate. If you're farmed enough, you can burst down almost any squishy enemy without too much effort. But here's something you need to pay attention to: enemy items. If your target has picked up defensive items like Dreadnought Armor or Rose Gold Meteor, don't just rush in with your ultimate. If you do that, your damage will get reduced or absorbed, and you'll end up wasting your ult. Instead, chip away at their HP first with your shadows, first skill, and even some basic attacks. Once their health is lowered and their defensive effects are gone, that's when you go in with your ultimate to finish the job. On the other hand, if the enemy doesn't have strong defensive items, then the job is much simpler. You can just go with Shadow plus first skill plus ultimate, and you'll almost always secure the kill on any squishy hero. And here's another tip: don't waste your ultimate when it's not necessary. For example, if you catch a squishy enemy who's already super low HP, you don't need to ult them at all. Your basic attacks combined with your first skill are more than enough to finish them off. Save your ultimate for bigger fights, or for situations where you really need to secure the kill. I'll be honest, even I sometimes get confused in these situations. I catch myself using Hayabusa's ultimate unnecessarily, even when I could have killed the enemy with just basics and skills. So don't worry if you make that mistake. It happens. But the more you practice, the more you'll learn when to hold your ultimate and when to use it. That decision-making is what will make you a lot stronger in the mid-game. So just now, what I did was pretty simple. I only used my first skill and ultimate because we're already entering the late game stage. And here's where things get very serious. In the late game, Hayabusa's burst damage is absolutely insane. If you land your combo correctly, you can delete most squishy heroes in less than a second. But at the same time, his biggest disadvantage also shows up here: his squishiness. Honestly, you can compare his survivability to heroes like Layla or Hanabi. That's how fragile he becomes. He's basically a one-shot dead hero, and if you're not careful, you'll disappear in the blink of an eye. That's why in the late game, you need to be highly alert and extremely cautious. You can't just dive in recklessly, because one mistake means instant death. Now, let me explain with an example. I used my ultimate instantly on Yin. Why? Because Yin is one of those heroes who can completely one-shot Hayabusa. His first skill in the late game scales insanely high, and if I had waited even a second too long, I would have been deleted. In situations like that, against assassins or fighters who can burst you instantly, you must use your ultimate right away before they get the chance to land their skills. But, as I always say, not every situation is the same. You shouldn't just spam your ultimate the moment you see an enemy. If the situation isn't that risky, like when the enemy mage or marksman has already used their key skills, you don't always need to ult. In fact, against vulnerable squishy heroes, your first skill plus shadows plus basic attacks are more than enough to kill them. Don't underestimate your late game basic damage, because by now it scales really well with your items. The main rule in late game is this: choose wisely when to ult. If the threat is high and you know you can die in a single combo, ult instantly. But if it's a safe window and the target is already exposed or skill-less, save your ultimate for the next fight and finish them with your other skills instead. Guys, this is off topic, just a quick note. Remember how I said in late game it's situational to use your skills instead of your ultimate? Well, this was one of those moments. Kimmy was alone, so even though it was late game, I didn't need to waste my ultimate. I could kill her easily with just my other skills. So now back to the main topic. You should always respect crowd control in the late game. Stuns, roots, knockups, anything that stops your movement can instantly ruin your play. Even if you're fully farmed and super confident, just one CC chain is enough to erase you from the fight. That's how dangerous late game fights are. Remember, in late game, everyone's damage is extremely high. Even being stunned for just 2 seconds is more than enough for enemy burst heroes to kill you instantly. That's why your positioning and awareness become just as important as your damage. Now, let's talk about positioning depending on your role. If you're playing as an assassin like Hayabusa, your positioning is different. You don't want to sit in the front line, and you also shouldn't stick too tightly with your teammates. Instead, stay in a spot where you can quickly dive onto the enemy squishies when the fight breaks out. That doesn't mean you should ignore your teammates. It means you're watching carefully, waiting for the right moment. Once your team engages or the enemy wastes their skills, you move in and target their backline. You can mark your targets from different angles, sometimes from behind, sometimes from the side, depending on the situation. The key is to stay unpredictable and out of immediate danger, while still being close enough to jump in and do your job. And if you're playing as a marksman, you should always stay at the back line, far behind your own teammates. If you stick too closely to them, the enemy tank or initiator can dive into the group, lock you down, and you'll have no chance to escape. Being slightly behind gives you reaction time and safety. Don't stand too far in the front, or you'll get focused and deleted. Don't stay too far back either, because you'll be useless in fights. Instead, stay slightly behind or beside your tank, ready to jump in on the enemy backline or protect your own squishies if assassins dive them. Now, as a fighter, your positioning is kind of a mix between frontline and side angle. You're not as tanky as a pure tank, but you're not as fragile as a marksman either. In the late game, your job is to be in a spot where you can dive into the enemy backline when the fight breaks out, but also peel and help your team when needed. Good fighters shine in late game fights because they can sustain long battles, so choose your moment carefully and then commit. And for mages, positioning is similar to marksmen. Most mages are extremely squishy, but their damage in the late game is very high, and many of them bring crowd control to the fight. Always stay far in the back line, keeping a safe distance. Use your range and skills to poke or zone enemies from behind your front line. Never stand in the middle of your team clump. If the enemy tank dives in with AoE CC, you'll be the first target. If your mage is more of a mobile burst mage, like Kagura, Lilia, or Harith, you can play from the side angle, but always keep your escape path open. In short, late game mage positioning. Stay safe, deal damage, control fights with CC. And lastly, tanks are the ones who set the tone of every late game fight. Your positioning must always be in the front line, but with caution. You should be the first to take vision and absorb enemy damage. Always position yourself in between the enemy and your own carries, marksman, mage, so you can peel if assassins dive them. Don't wander too far ahead without your team, or you'll get caught and die before the fight even starts. Sometimes, you need to hold your position and wait for the right chance to engage. Late game mistakes are too costly. Basically, tanks need to be the shield and initiator of the team while keeping constant awareness of their squishies behind them. So guys, that's it for today's video. I've already shared with you some of the most important Hayabusa tips, from early game to mid game to late game, and even gave you some extra advice about positioning, not just for assassins, but also for marksmen, mages, fighters, and tanks. Now I know positioning is such a huge topic on its own, and trust me, I'm going to make a separate video in the future solely focused on positioning, because honestly, positioning can make or break your entire gameplay, no matter which hero you use. That's why I really want to dive deeper into it later on. But for now, let's wrap it up here. If you enjoyed the tips, learned something new, or if you simply like this kind of detailed breakdown, then please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel because it really motivates me to keep making more content for you guys. I honestly need your support, and my goal is to reach 10,000 subscribers before December. It's a big target, but with your help, I believe I can make it. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It doesn't cost you anything, but it means the world to me. That's it for now, guys. More positioning tips and in-depth guides are coming soon. Until then, keep practicing, keep improving, and I'll see you all in the next video.